and we'll go around, and I'll get you in here, and then you can reverse it. Yep, just reverse it.
This is Sage Morin, also known as the Matriarch.
I'm going into this, like this. Yeah, and then I'm gonna...
She's a wrestler and is rehearsing for her show in Edmonton, Alberta.
Squeeze out, arm drag from there. You're gonna stay down.
If you're listening to this and haven't been to indie wrestling, it's really fun, it's really strange, and it's just a place where you can and should, scream and cheer and boo and kind of anything goes.
And that's Jana Pruden. She's a feature writer at The Globe. Jana's been following Sage's story well before her time as a professional wrestler. That's because Sage's start in wrestling was born out of an intense personal tragedy.
I wanted to do this story because I am a crime reporter and I do a lot of stories at the time something terrible happens, but I'm really interested in what happens in the weeks and months and years after.
Sage's terrible event changed her life and became national news. But a decade on, she's turned her grief into a creative pursuit. And she's become an inspiration for Indigenous youth. So today, we hear from Jana and from Sage about her transformation into the Matriarch. I'm Menaka Raman-Wilms, and this is The Decibel from The Globe and Mail.
Still in the headlock, and so if I have you up here, you're gonna pull my hair and take me to the corner. My hair! The big show day.
Yeah. Are you nervous before a show, or how do you feel?
Yeah, honestly, I'm not as nervous as I was in the beginning, and I'm actually able to, be a little bit more present and decompress and enjoy it, because I remember some of my first matches just feeling like I had blinders on, or and just almost feeling kind of like a blackout, and I'm just like, I don't even know what happened,
Sage Morin is a 38-year-old Indigenous woman from the Saddle Lake Cree Nation. She's the mom of Quentin, who's 12 years old, and she is a professional wrestler. So do you have stuff you have to do right now? Or?
I think they're obviously fixing the ropes and stuff, so I think we'll probably just kind of start settling in, and I just kind of start spreading out and get my stuff ready, and slowly, right? It's funny, such a process. It's almost like my Clark Kent moment. I'm literally just and then so I'll change into my contacts and start getting my hair done, and then get my makeup on, and then get changed, and it's slowly turning into a different person.
Well, I first heard about Sage Morin years ago when her son Gio was killed. And that was this case that I think the whole city heard about.
It was something that obviously rocked me and my family to our core.
It was the summer of 2013. At the time, Gio was 2 years old and Quentin was 5 months old. And Sage and her husband went out to have dinner to celebrate Gio's success with potty training. He'd had, a milestone or a breakthrough, and they went out to celebrate, and they were sitting on the patio in the sun. It was a beautiful day, and they were cheersing with glasses of water, and there was a Shirley Temple coming for Gio. And Sage told me this was a moment of pure happiness, where she had everything that she ever wanted. And then this blue SUV came hurtling into the patio and hit Gio, pinned him to the wall. Also sent Sage and her husband flying. They were both injured. The baby, Quentin, was tossed to a wall in his car seat, hit the wall. and luckily survived. He landed upside down in his car seat, but he survived. But Gio did not, and he died from his injuries. The driver of that vehicle was a man named Richard Suter, and he had been at another restaurant in the same parking lot, had had a drink there, and left. He was arguing with his wife, fighting with his wife, and drove into the patio. Yeah, I mean, at the scene, I think it was just mayhem. People pulled him out of the vehicle. People started attacking him. He was arrested. There were indications to people at the time that he was impaired, and so it was investigated as a drunk driving incident.
And really the way that happened, it felt at that time, it felt to me that it was something that they were trying to just like sweep under the rug. Because the guy who killed my son refused to blow, and he refused to take like any accountability, and was just problematic in that way right from day one.
From police cells, you know, you have the right to call a lawyer, and he called a legal aid line, and a lawyer there advised him not to do the breathalyzer, which is the wrong advice. This lawyer admits that he did that, and so Richard Suter didn't blow, so he was charged with refusing a breathalyzer. But one of the things functionally that means is that we will never really know if he would have blown over or not. A lot of people do consider this an impaired driving crash, an impaired driving death. Sage and her family absolutely do. You know, was it a matter of hitting the gas instead of the brake? I guess we truly will never know.
Like right after this, like my son passed on Sunday, and I think it was Monday night that I was out passing out like flyers in my neighborhood, telling people like what had happened, and really kind of quickly started this campaign, I guess, like Justice for Gio. And we really, it was almost like a call out for our community to come and support us and stand with us. And they did. You know, it was so incredible how our community really showed up for us.
And then another thing that kept it in the forefront of the public mind in Edmonton is Sage herself, that she started this Justice for Gio campaign within days. So it was a case that really never left the public attention, and that had some truly, I think, shocking moments to it too. And a story that I did actually cover and work on when I worked for the Edmonton Journal was that some men came to Richard Suter's house late at night in the winter one night, and they took him. He was wearing a house coat, and they blindfolded him and drove him out of town, and they cut off his thumb and left him in the snow. You know, Sage told me that a lot of people suspected that it had something to do with her or her family, and it didn't. So I just want to make that really clear too, that this isn't because of Sage. This isn't because of her family at all. This is something that vigilantes did that ultimately played a role in him getting a lower sentence than he would have. So it took 5 years for the case to wind through all the levels of court, from the original sentencing to the Court of Appeal and all the way to the Supreme Court. And ultimately, Richard Suter served 10 months in jail. And one thing that is notable about the case is that in the Supreme Court decision, it really reaffirmed this law and this idea that the penalty for refusing a breathalyzer is the same, or should be the same, as being impaired at the time of a fatal car crash.
And one of the first organizations to really kind of get behind us and wrap their arms around us was Monster Pro Wrestling. I had never even been to a live wrestling show at that point. I had no idea who these people were, but they put on a show for Gio, and they made a little belt with his name on it. And they had our family sitting front row, and they called us into the ring, and they gave us this little belt while the whole crowd was like chanting Gio's name, and that's here, like in this building, you know. And it was just such a moment. Like, this is literally a month or two after my son passed. So everything was really, really still fresh on my healing journey. But that moment, even still now, even after, like, I've talked about this for like 100 times, but it's still like, it gives me goosebumps thinking about that moment because it was just so beautiful.
We'll be right back.
At this point, I had invested probably over $40,000 in my mental health and just like keeping myself alive. I'd probably had like all types of modalities of therapy and really found a lot of healing just in our traditional ways. And as Indigenous people, I mean, we're oral people, you know, and everything, all of our greatest lessons and all of our greatest teachings are all done through storytelling. And so I think it's really, just a really hand-in-hand way that of course Indigenous people love wrestling, you know, it's a storytelling.
And then somehow it just came into my understanding that Sage Morin, who was the mom of Gio, was now wrestling. And I thought that was really interesting, and I thought it would make a great story.
And I'd say maybe like 9 years down the road is when Massive reached out to me. He kind of seen me kind of stepping out of my cave a little bit more.
I'm Sean Dunster, or the Tattooed Terminator Massive Damage. I just had seen her online doing a bunch of stuff. Looked like she's kind of coming out a bit. So I said, hey, you want to try some wrestling? You want to do some announcing or reffing or get us some shows and I'll give you some money. Like, whatever, what do you think? I want to wrestle, she says. So I got 10 brothers. I've been wrestling all my life. So she came and started throwing all my guys around and I'm like, yeah, this will be a good fit.
When I first was asked to kind of start wrestling, I immediately knew that I didn't want to just be a wrestler who happened to be Indigenous. I wanted to be an Indigenous wrestler and have that like identity at the forefront. And then, so like I said, when I started thinking about like, you know, who the strong women in our Cree culture are, and it's like without a doubt, like the strongest and the highest would definitely be like the Matriarch, you know, like, and so, like I said, that's kind of how I wanted to aspire to be, is that strong kind of lead through love and like have like a responsibility to the people kind of person.
It's really cool to watch Sage get ready because there is this transformation that happens. She comes early, so she has all this time to do her hair and makeup and everything, but also I think it is this emotional and mental transformation that takes place. And when we were there in November was the first day of this new outfit. You know, it's like bright green. It has traditional Indigenous floral designs on it, and these like bright green tassels hanging off of her cleavage and her knees and her forearms. And so it's a really like powerful, colorful, joyful look.
I mean, I remember the beginning of it. It was hard because, again, here's a girl that's full of trauma. She has 9 million things on her plate, so getting her to show up was hard. There was a few times I had to have her take her off shows and stuff because she just wasn't progressing and wasn't ready. And when I did that, when I took her off shows, then all of a sudden that attendance was a lot better. And then she really started picking it up and stuff. But I had to tell her, like, if you're not going to be serious, then I'm not going to be serious.
This whole thing, like I said, when I started wrestling, was really in connection with my son. I feel like Gio has guided me to here. And it's weird, like I feel more connected to him and I feel more connected to myself when I'm wrestling. And so it's almost like this whole wrestling thing has been a gift from Gio, because like he, as a kid, was such a roughhouse kid too. Like he was always playing around and being crazy and like putting his cousins in chokeholds and stuff. So I think that he would think that this is really, really cool to have had his mom as a wrestler.
I really think she's a beacon of hope and inspiration for a lot of little Indigenous kids, not just little girls, I think kids, because they see another Indigenous person that is doing something they love to do and kicking butt at doing it. So, that's what she'll probably give to the business. I think she'll be a beacon of hope for a lot of these kids that are, struggling with, suicide, alcoholism, drugs, all of it, loneliness, having tough place to grow up where there's nothing around to do, so that's where I think she'll come in.
It feels important when they see this Indigenous woman come out, and I'm not a villain and I'm not a victim, I'm victorious, and it's something that they can get behind. And I think having that kind of representation is really important, because we spend a lot of time telling our sad stories, and there is so much of that trauma out there, and they are important stories to tell. But I think our trauma leads to our resiliency, which is an even more important story to tell.
I do hear a lot of stories about healing, about resilience. I cover a lot of stories like that. And, people go on trips, they climb a mountain, they do all kinds of things. But when you think about wrestling, and this is wrestling. This is costumes and people screaming, and it's independent wrestling. So you're in a community center, and it's over the top, and it's kind of corny, and it's cheesy, and it's wild. And that's not really what you think about as, a therapeutic modality after trauma. And I think something that really interested me was, how is this thing, this wrestling, this wild independent wrestling, the thing that has brought her so much healing and helped her rebuild her life, and that also that it's the place where she's able to give so much to other people.
It really became quite quickly bigger than me, and really bigger than wrestling even, and getting out into some of the communities that we've been to. I always go back to these Indigenous communities. That's always my favorite place to perform and to be. It doesn't matter how many fans you have, or how big the venue will be. These res shows always feel I call them my Moccasin Square Garden, because to me that's the top. There is where it really, here in Edmonton, it's great to be with friends and family, but going into the Indigenous communities, it feels bigger than me, and it feels bigger than wrestling, because I remember what it was like being, an Indigenous youth, and not really feeling like there was anything out there for me. And it feels like such a big, important job, and a really, really special. And it makes me emotional, because it's a really special role to play. It feels really important for the youth to see, but also for me. And I really hope that they understand what a key component that has all been in my healing, and just like I said, pushing me to want to be a better person, to be worthy of guiding some of these children, or being a role model, or having, sometimes you have these kids come up to me and tell me things you make me not want to give up on life, or you show me, how to be strong. And it's things like that just hit you so hard, that it doesn't matter what's in the envelope at the end of the night. That's priceless. And so like I said, it's really been medicine.
I'm a reporter, and I'm writing about the Matriarch. I see you got an autograph from her. What do you think about her?
I like her a lot, and she's my favorite.
She's your favorite, and how come?
Because she's native like me, and she's very
that's it, right? Like, it's just that connection. And going back to like our Cree teachings of Wakotawin, it's very much like we are all connected. And not just in the bad, you know, it's like when one of us wins, we all win. And so sometimes just being able to see that, you know, she's Native like me and she wins, you know, it's a different narrative than these kids have been given their entire lives. And so that's when it becomes very grand and very big. And like, I feel so small and I don't feel like, sorry, I'm like, you're like my therapist, right? I don't feel like worthy of that role sometimes, you know, it's been hard. It's been a struggle for me. And so just trying to, like I said, wrestling allows us that opportunity to be who we want to be.
To me, there's an obvious metaphor that's happening there. That's like, you are someone who has kept getting up, and that you're doing that now in the ring, and you're showing that. Is that something you think about consciously?
Yeah, and I mean, like, it's interesting that you use that phrase, because even going back to, right, I guess like the beginning of this chapter in my story was when I lost my son. And at the funeral, when they were lowering him down, we had a very, like, I've always been very spiritually connected, and I've always had a close connection to my culture. And so we had like my uncles and my brothers and my cousins there with their hand drums, and they were singing prayer songs as they were lowering my son's casket down. And I remember there was a part of me that just wanted to jump into that hole too. And I just collapsed on the ground. And my uncles and my cousins, they kept singing these prayer songs that we sing in the sweat. And the song is called Bemote. And my mom, she came to me and she picked me up and she told me, like, the song is singing, they're singing Bemote, that means to get up and to walk again. Yeah, and it got up, like I got up, and I've continued to get up, but it's still, you know, it's still like, I can't hear that song without breaking down, you know. People tend to say, and especially like early on, it was really hard to hear, like, you're so strong, because people didn't really see what was going on behind, you know. People didn't see like that I didn't even want to be alive, you know, like, and that fight was so intense for me. Like, I didn't feel strong at all. And now I get to, like I said, go out and be that strong person, you know. And it's almost like a fake it till you make it, because now I feel like, I feel stronger, and I feel like the support and the love and accomplishment, which is something that I feel like was always missing in my life. I don't think I really had like a moment where I felt like I had accomplished much to be proud of. And before I started wrestling, I felt really incredibly alone. I lived on my own, and I share custody with my son. So 1 week he's with me, and 1 week he's with his dad. And so for a week, I'm just like by myself. And I would go to work. I would like fall into that routine of like going to work and coming home and just being depressed and crying my eyes out by myself. And nobody knew that, you know. And I would lay there at home and think like, I am not important to anybody, and nobody even notices. And like, if I were to die today, like, nobody would even notice or like miss me, or like, people probably wouldn't even notice until it started to smell or something, you know. Like, that's what I would honestly think. And it was such a like dark thought to realize that it was honestly probably the truth too, you know. And really wrestling changed all of that, because now it's like, if I don't show up to practice, like, I will hear about it, you know. I couldn't go longer than 3 days without somebody noticing that I'm gone, you know? Like, wrestling has enriched my life like so much through that, just with like, not just physically, but like emotionally and mentally and like family-wise, you know? Like I said, I didn't feel important, and I didn't feel loved, and I didn't feel accomplished before I started wrestling. And then it's really like, it's undeniable, you know, like when you step into that ring and you feel the energy all around you, it's palpable, you know. So it is a really amazing gift, and like I said, it's just like medicine, like a self, like, I don't know how else to describe it.
This episode was produced by Kasia Mihailovich. Field recording by Amber Bracken. Our producers are Madeline White, Michal Stein, and Allie Graham. David Crosby edits the show. Adrian Chung is our senior producer, and Matt Frainer is our managing editor. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.